Hello friends, this is Reshma welcomes you to discuss another topic in database management system. So it is related to constraints on relational data model. In my previous session, we have discussed about the concept of relational data model, the components of relational data model, and also the characteristics of a relation in relational data model. And in this session, so we'll focus on the constraints, mean the conditions on the relational data model. So that is till now what we have done. We have discussed about characteristics of single relation. That is those four characteristics which we have discussed in previous section. They are considered for a single relation. But relational data model means a collection of relations. It will have many relations. As a single database have many relations, single model has many relations. The tuples in those relations are usually related in different ways. So how they are related to form the relationship? Again, there are some many restrictions and some conditions they have to follow. To have relationship between one tuple of a relation to tuple of another relation, they need to maintain some condition, some constraints. Based on what type of constraints they need to maintain. So based on that, so here the constraints are categorized mainly into three types. The first is inherent model based constraints or implicit constraints. Second one, schema based constraints or explicit constraints. Third one, application based or semantic constraints, or we can also say business constraints. So now we will discuss one by one. So these inherent based or implicit constraints, as the name indicates, these are the constraints which are inherent, which come implicitly while creating or while designing the relations in relational data model. So these are the implicit constraints or the built-in constraints. For example, if I take this relation, so here we have entered some values. If we see the properties of these values, all values are simple, that is atomic. This is a characteristic of a relation. The value should be atomic, it should be indivisible. So this is one constraint. Now if I take this example here, the value which we have entered for address, it has a complex or a composite attribute. The values are composite, means which can be divided further. So these type of values will not be accepted by the relation. So because this is an inherent implicit property of a table to accept only atomic values. So then these type of constraints are referred to as implicit constraints or inherent model based constraint. This is the constraint of a relational data model where it should not allow complex or multi-valued attributes. So here values should be simple. Then how to represent address here? We can represent address by dividing the address into different columns, like name of the city, one column, area of the address, pin number. So like this, we have to divide the address into multiple columns, and each column we need to enter only simpler atomic values. So this is the first type of constraint to be followed while inserting the values. Then second type of constraint is explicit constraint. This is schema based constraint. First one was model based constraint. Now is schema based constraint, and this should be specified explicitly. And we know what the meaning of schema. Schema means which will give the structure of the database. So relation for the relational data model, the relational database schema, it will give the structure of a relation. Then that structure should be specified explicitly. And where to specify that structure? It has to be specified in using data definition language. While defining the structure of a relation, these constraints should be specified directly in the schema. So they will come with DDL, that is data definition language. So means while creating a table, for example, here I have created a student table. While creating the table, we need to tell explicitly what conditions to be followed. For example, if I take marks column in this table, so now here we have to specify the condition mark should be between 1 to 100. So maximum number of digits should be 3. So now once I start inserting the values, it will accept the first row because marks is 2 digits, second also 2 digits, third also 2 digits. But if I go for the fourth tuple, here the marks is of 6 digits. But we cannot have marks of 6 digits, it can be maximum of 3 digits for a regular engineering exams. So then this we need to specify this constraint while defining this table. So now it will not accept. Similarly, if we take semester column, this is the student table related to an engineering student. So in the semester column, it can accept semester number from 1 to 8. Semester can be between 1 to 8. So it should accept only those values. If I try to enter value other than 1 to 8, in the first row I have entered semester 10. Is it possible to have any engineering student to be in 10th semester? No. So then while creating the table, you need to add these constraints. So the value of semester, we need to check while inserting value of semester should be between 1 and 8. So these are the domain constraints because we are entering the values and we are checking the domain constraints. Similarly, if I take USN and name, there also we have to specify some conditions. What are the maximum characters it can accept? What is the maximum number of digits it can accept? Can we enter null value? Can whether any student can take the admission without USN number? Whether the birth date can be null. So that is sometimes we need to specify. You can't leave the USN number column empty. It should have at least some number. So like this we can add the conditions while creating the table. So means while giving the structure for the table, while giving the schema for the table for the relation, we need to specify these constraints explicitly. So these type of constraints are referred to as explicit constraints or schema based constraints. Then third type of constraints are application based or semantic constraints or business rule constraints. So these are the constraints which we can apply on the relations of a relational data model after giving the structure. That is, while executing the queries, while retrieving the data from the database of the relational data model, we can specify some conditions using some applications, or we can write some stored procedures, or we can call these from some front end. So there we can specify these conditions based on some rules, for example. So these are the constraints which we can apply directly. So that it means these are the constraints, they cannot be directly expressed in the schema. So while giving the structure for the relationship of data model, we cannot specify these constraints, but they can be expressed or enforced by different application programs, or by giving some business rules according to the business rules. Using these are called semantic constraints. So now for example, after creating the table, I want to delete some content. So while deleting the content, for example, this is a table I have. In the first table we have 4 employees, they belongs to maintenance department and each employee is getting some salary. Now in the second table, what we have done, I have deleted the employee Ram and Ravi. If those employees are not working in the department, can we have a salary column for that? No, because now the employee is not working only. He is not in the job. Then we cannot have salary for Ram. And Ravi also left the job. He is not working now. Then we cannot keep the salary for Ravi. So what we need to do? So then these type of constraint we should add using some application programs. So what we have to do in application program, there we need to give some specific like semantic constraint. So there we need to specify whenever some of the employee leaving the job, then delete salary for those employees. So how to specify that? We can write this as on delete set null. On delete means whenever the employee is deleted, set salary as null. So Ram is deleted, we need to set salary to null. Ravi deleted from the job, set the salary to null. In the same way, either we can give null value or the complete row can be deleted. Then after Ram and Ravi left the job, how many employees will be there here? Only Sita and Rita will be working. So this is the meaning of on delete cascade. So like this, we can define the constraints using some application programs or by giving them semantic constraints. So these are the three type of constraints which we need to consider while we need to incorporate in relational data model. So thank you for watching the video. If you have any doubts in the constraints, please post your questions in the comment box. Okay, in my next session, we'll study about some more constraints which we can apply on the relational data model. Thank you.